This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd Neiman.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Ferd Neiman here again today with another episode of the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast. Got another great guest. Looking forward to talking about some unique strategies that he's employed in his career. He's really big on education, mentorship, networking, seasoned veteran. Really happy to have him on here. Please help me welcome my guest, Steve Case. Steve, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, Ferd. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and look forward to our chat. And I'm excited.
Yeah, well, likewise. Well, tell us something about your background. You have a unique background. I think you touch on your background indirectly touches a lot of people through Mobile Home University that I didn't even know you were involved in. So I wanted you to tell people more about that, and then also just what you've been able to do with SECO, and then we'll get into some of the details on some of your deals, past and present, and go from there.
Sure, Ferd. Well, actually, I'm a retired Air Force pilot. I retired in 2006, but I moved in Georgia in 1999 and realized I had just a few more years left in my career. So I really didn't like the idea of being an airline pilot and travel and so forth. So I thought real estate would be a good option. Very fortunate to have some strong mentors in my background over the years. In 99, I met Lonnie Scruggs, who later became a really, really close friend of mine. Wrote Deals on Wheels. I'm sure anybody's been in this industry. That
Lonnie
book is
Deals,
like
that's
a classic. Yeah. Lonnie Deals. Ernie too. Also had a course back then, huge profits in mobile home parks. So I got to know Ernie very, very well. Ike Spotiford, Jack Miller. A lot of the names people don't recognize these days, but they were paramount in kind of forming my career in this space, if you want to say. So from 99 till 2000, before I retired in the Air Force, I focused on MH space. Also did some other things, but like most of us, I started with Lonnie Deals, a couple of little things here locally, middle Georgia area. And then after I met Ernie in 2000, I bought my first park, 67 pads. Ernie helped me put the deal together. We did a unique strategy, which we're going to talk about later, this master lease with an option. Also, Ernie got me in the self-storage space. So I've kind of been dual-hatted for all these years, mobile homes and the parks and self-storage. In 2004, Ernie was doing some training around the country, different locales. So I kind of pitched in and helped him. By that time, he had taught me quite a few things. I think I had 4 parks at the time. We started doing it in Houston, different cities and so forth. Well, unfortunately, Ernie had a stroke. So myself and my partner at the time, Corey Donaldson, started doing this training, which we created mobilehomeuniversity.com. And basically it was at one locale, one event a year. We started out a couple hundred. When we eventually stopped doing it in 2008, we had 800 people in Austin, Texas. And it was primarily geared to train folks, mostly new people thinking about getting in the industry, or those that were already just starting, didn't really know where to go from there. Out of it, in the very beginning, spawned boot camps. We had 3 or 4 a year in the big metropolis of San Angelo, Texas. This is where Corey had 3 parks. I did some self-storage boot camps as well. But around 2008 or so, life was real busy. Teenage kids had a lot of properties, self-storage, multifamily, and MH space. So I kind of stepped aside, and that's when Frank Rolfe and Dave Reynolds I just turned it over to them, sold them the business, and they've grew it pretty large. The Mobile Home University, what they do and everything. Great training. Frank's a good guy. I've known him for a long time. I can tell you some good stories about Frank when he hated the business, but obviously he's an icon in there in the industry now. But and in 2008, I also went on the board as a community owner for the Georgia Manufactured Housing Association. There's 2 board members that are community owners, myself and Spencer Roan. That's where I met Spencer. We sat down one day and said, hey, these park owners out here are kind of disassociated with everyone else. They're on their own island. Why don't we all meet one day on a Saturday up in Atlanta, central location, and just share ideas to help each other out? So that's what formed SECO, what's called Southeast Community Owners. At first meeting, I think we had 12 people. And
Wow.
it's now grown into, we're expecting upwards of 800 this year. It's the largest event for community owners, small to mid-size and large owners in the country.
And it's no longer
And
for the Southeast only, right? I mean, not that
no,
I've been there the
we
last couple
kept the
years.
name SECO. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, most of the people that come aren't from the Southeast.
Right.
But this year I'm in charge of the educational platform, which is what I truly love. Back when I was in the Air Force, my last 5 years was an instructor evaluator pilot on a Boeing 707. And through the years, I've just loved training and teaching and mentoring. And that's what SECO started as, us getting together, helping each other. And that's this year we're going back to the roots as far as the educational platform, which thank you. You're going to be there this year.
No, I look forward.
Knowledge base.
I look forward to coming. People can email me after this too. I can give them a link to sign up to go, and I'm going to give a presentation on contracts and the key documents you need for your transactions. I know you're going to give a presentation there as well, so it should be good. And yours is going to focus mostly on. Well, I think you got more than one, but in particular, you got one on master lease with option. I definitely want to cover that today because that's a unique strategy. And the lawyer in me says there's pros and cons, but I also see that, you know, as an operator, an owner, there's some unique benefits to going the master lease route. So I wanted to get your expertise on how you've been able to do that.
Yeah,
I think you've done it more than most.
Yeah, well, to me, Bert, it's always been keep it simple, right? And that's what these guys taught me back when I first started, back in 99, 2000. To me, a master lease with an option is very, very simple. To some, they make it complicated. Nothing against lawyers, but sometimes they make them very complicated. But I've kept it simple over the years. It's been a great tool for me. Obviously, it has to take unique perspective, unique different variables have to fit for it to work. But I have done several. Last count, I think, was 9.
Right.
Total
So
deals
the basics of a master lease is basically what you have rights to operate the park. You don't yet own the park. You're leasing it, so you're making some form of payment to the owner, and then you have the option and essentially the right to purchase it, generally at a predetermined price at a future date. At which point you will then own the property. In the meantime, if something goes wrong, you generally have some outs. Basically, you can choose not to purchase it. That can be tied up depending on the level of the contract, but it's almost like a form of seller finance, but with more flexibility for you, the tenant buyer, and then you can own and operate the park, which allows you to improve it before closing day, which can help with valuation, financing, timelines, etc. Is that kind of the gist of how you're rolling through these?
Yeah, that's correct. And there's some other variables as well, but basically, like you said, you're renting the park and you have an option to buy it. There's usually a term of that option. I always like to have a minimum 5 years. I can purchase anytime between now and the 5 years. I'm not set to an exact purchase time frame. You've got to purchase it on this date. It does have a fixed price. A lot of times people ask, how do you know what the lease payment should be? I've always made it very simple. Let's say the interest rate's 5%, and you were going to buy it for $3 million. It's $150,000 a year. You divide it by 12, and that's what the monthly lease payment is.
Mm-hmm.
And you've really got to keep them simple for the sellers. And there's something I want to pass on to all of your viewers is I have made it a rule throughout my career in investing in whatever space it was be. There's only 2 deals I've ever purchased where I didn't get to know the seller. And they were both self-storage deals. All of the park deals that I've done, and I've bought very few from a broker, by the way, less than 6. Even with a broker transaction, I'd say, okay, listen, you have to give me access to the owner. I want to go there, talk to them, spend a few days, because I got to know why they want to sell the park. And that's key in the master lease with an option. It's always management issues, infrastructure issues. They can't afford capital expenditures. They're tired of it. It could be a lot of issues, but if you can find that root issue, now you've got to come up with how to solve their problem. And usually it's not a monetary problem. It's one of those things. And then so you say, I can solve your problem. And then you can go on and talk about how the master lease with an option would benefit them. No property tax. No tax you have to pay on the sale because they're renting it to me. I'm just making sure that they get a fair price. I can overpay for a property sometimes. I've had sellers stuck on prices. A good example was a deal that I did that In my mind, it was worth about 2 million, but he wanted 2.4. I said, that's fine. I can pay you 2.4 if we do this master lease with an option. I tried to make the lease payments as little as possible because there was some upside I need to fill in the park. I needed to fill some lots. And I figured, if I could fill up another 4 or 5 lots, it would be at the 2.4 what I thought it was worth. So I just made the lease option the lease price a little bit lower. And I kept it. So he was happy. He got his price, and we ran out that deal, and it worked fine. It actually went out for about 3.5 years before I eventually purchased it. But the positive cash flow thing, a lot of these folks, they got a good sum of money coming back. What are they going to do with it?
Right.
Many mom and pop operators are not going to go reinvest it in another property. They're ready, they're done. What do they do with it? Well, who wants to put it in the markets as volatile as they have been, can be? And I give them a guaranteed fact, I ACH them the payments, everything's fine. And we go about our business.
That was one of my questions. If I can jump in there. So, I mean, if you come by and you want to pay 2 million, I want to pay 2 million. Neither one of us want to pay 2.4, but in your case, you say, look, I'll give you the 2.4. I just need to have it over time. So that's a way that you've faced an objection. Generally you're listening, you're going to know them. The objection is they want 2.4. You found a way to get there. What about a scenario where they want 2 million firm right now? Will you pay them the 2 million, or do you then say, no, I don't want to do the 2 million now. I will convince you the master lease option is a good or reasonable offer for you. How do you I feel like a lot of the sellers I've talked to, they're like, no, I want my money. I don't want to play banker. They see it as playing banker, and maybe that's where you build rapport over spending time with them. But how do you overcome that objection so that your offer stands out against the crowd that's representing, cash offer, whether it's bank or personal cash, it's quote cash to the seller.
Well, obviously if they want a full cash out, there's really no way to do the master lease with option, but that's where I think what I'm not seeing for today is this creative idea and thinking that was forced upon us back in the early 2000s. If you remember, there was no lending sources for MH back then. For those of you as old as I am, I just turned 60. So, but anyway, so you had to figure out, it was all owner financing, it was all cash payouts and so forth. But what one of these guys taught me, which was very, very unique, I don't think anybody's doing this, and I'm going to talk a little bit more so about this at SECO, is, okay, I've got a seller, right? Why don't I go find a substitute seller? You say, what are you talking about? Very simple. I go to, in this case, let's say 20 people. And I'm just throwing out a number, it could be 2 people. And I say, okay, I need $2 million for you guys to put up to buy this park. And oh, by the way, let's do it out of your Roth IRA. Now that's something people don't think about.
Right.
Over the years, there are many strategies most of us use to build up large Roths using options. And you get them to you bring another buyer or seller in other words, a private investor, private person to purchase the park, and then you master lease it with an option to buy from them. I've done that several times. So
let me make sure I'm following you. So let's say that I have a regular job at, the local bank X. I'm a security guard at bank X. I've built up a Roth IRA. I've got $500,000 in my Roth IRA. You come to me and you say, hey, Ferd, use your Roth to buy this property, and then I will finance it I'll sell or finance it, or I'll lease option it from your Roth. And then one day I'm going to buy it from you at an agreed upon price, a higher price, and then the proceeds are going to stay inside your Roth, thereby increasing the size of the Roth and still maintaining the tax shields or tax benefits that are part of the underlying Roth.
Exactly. As long as you're using the right custodian, you have to use a self-directed IRA custodian, equity trust, trust, some of the other ones out there. Here's a typical deal that I've done in the past. So you get this particular instance was 2 people. They went in, used the Roth money to purchase the property. I formed an LLC. Each Roth IRA is 50% membership. What I gave them was 5%. Let's say it's $1 million. So they got 50,000, 25 apiece in quarterly payments to the Roth IRA. And I give them each 10% of the upside of the property. Okay. Now what's 10%? Well, I'm eventually going to buy it, right? This was a turnaround project. So I knew I could increase the value rather quickly. I said, I'm going to keep you in the deal minimum of 2 years. So their 10%, their Roths went up 50,000 a year. So after 2 years, Now I got to pay them each $600 a piece to buy the property. That's the way the option was set up.
Okay.
So, great for them. What's that, a 15% return on their money? This was in like 2006 or 7 when everything was
So you
crazy.
bought it, quote, cash with their Roth money. So there's no bank involved.
No bank involved. We formed an LLC, and they're both Roths are 50% members.
And the seller in this case got their $1 million on the
Yeah,
day
that was a
closing.
case where I got the price down enough. I had a seller that was not willing to do the lease option, master lease with an option. So I just substitute. I went and got my own buyer, if you want to say, and then lease option it from there.
That's interesting.
And I've been on the
part
other
of the
side
need-
of that transaction too, where I've actually used my Roth money to purchase a property with a couple other people that another operator did the same thing.
Great. Yeah, I sold 2 parks to the guys that did that. They used their Roth to buy it. And I was like, okay, fine with me. I didn't care, but I had not seen that before. So it was good. So part of the strategy here for you was, at this point in time, getting traditional bank financing at least on this property was going to be challenging or less favorable. So you found your own bank, but you found basically a buyer that was going to have an immediate take, or a known takeout from you, that you had the right or the obligation to buy them out at some future date.
Right. And in this case, with the Roth guys, it was worded a little bit different. I had to pay them off.
Yeah.
So it was an option, but there was a clause in there that, eventually, now we could have extended the option. They're okay with that, but it was, I needed to get it done by 2 years because I was giving them pretty good upside. But yeah, it's all of my projects except for 2 have been turnaround deals where I've had to infill properties or, create some value out of some nastiness, if you want to call it. And so, it's been very difficult to do that type of lending, especially back then with banks, because they didn't want any part of it. Now, I did spend, one of the things I didn't say about in the very beginning was, what you've done over the years is, I think it was in 2010, myself and 4 other guys worked with Clayton Bank and Trust. I got to know Jim Clayton really well because Jim actually came to our old Mobile Home University, MHU, we call them Mobile Home Millions National Conference, and spoke and spent 3 days with the crowd there. It's about 600. Is in Orlando, I think, in 07. But I helped them form programs where operators could get lines of credit to infill their park through, chattel loans with their.
Which is that basically now what's 21st Mortgage Cash program?
21st Cash, yeah, that's Tim Williams runs 21st, but back then, Jim had sold out to Warren Buffett,
right?
And so he had his own bank, so he had a program, but 21st was doing it. But this is more, 21st does it kind of a per home basis. This was like a $500,000 line that you could move properties in and out of, kind of like a
inventory floor plan, inventory
plan. Yeah.
Exactly. I've got that. I've been able to do that on a couple of my parks, actually numerous of my parks with a couple of different banks. But it was definitely not easy at the beginning, where the bank's like, we're not going to finance the homes. But then later I got them to finance the purchase price, but not to set up reno. Well, then if I bought a used home, it's like, I need a lot of cash for the renovation and for the transport, for the concrete and all that. So eventually I got them to finance 100% of the project cost, but only for parks they had the land load on. So you got to do it before before you refi the local bank out. But that's
getting back to the other part, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I kind of wanted to make sure people are probably wondering, why in the world would you want a master lease with an option when if you can just go buy it from a bank? One, it saves you a lot of costs. I mean, there's a lot of costs associated with loans. Sometimes you got to do all the phase 1 stuff, all of the sometimes hydrology studies, you name it, on and on and on, right? Appraisals, that sort of thing. You don't need to do this. Now, granted, you got to be careful. You have to do your due diligence. You can't just go do this without looking at the property and making sure everything's okay. But I typically can get in very cheap. Like this, the very last one I did, which I just closed on it last August. And I initiated this thing in January of 2020. So it was at 3.5 years I had under a lease. It was a $4.5 million deal, and I only had to put up $10,000 as option consideration.
Wow.
So it was very little. There was no down payment, if you want to call it. So you can get control with little money down. That's one of the reasons I did it. You can get cash flow with minimal investment. This particular property wasn't an infill, only had 12 empty lots out of 147 spaces. So it was already cash flowing really well, but there was some upside on rents. Some of the homes, it's a big rental property. 108 of the homes are rental homes, late model, 99 through 2004. But also I get all the equity increase because the price is locked in.
Sure.
No property tax increase. That's huge because it never sold.
Right.
Now they could come out reassess it during the normal assessment periods, but it's
much less likely.
Not been triggered.
Much less likely because there's no disclosure of sales price,
Right.
No new mortgage, things of that sort.
And in this particular case, there were some capital improvements that need to be done, about $100,000 worth, that I agreed to as a part of the lease to get done in the first 12 months, which we did.
Okay.
But above all, I had a self-storage property about 2 hours away that I knew, I'm watching the market, I knew was one I was going to get rid of at some point in time. I'd owned this thing for about almost 15 years. And I said, you know what, this park is going to be where the money's going to in exchange. So I was very fortunate. I waited until the beginning of last year when everything was skyrocketed, sold it, and just 1031 right into this property. So there are some benefits.
Yeah, that's really important. I'm glad. I want to highlight that because you mentioned that to me previously, that you basically have built your own replacement property pipeline, because you then could sell your self-storage property at top dollar pricing and you knew you had a place to put the money. I sold the property in December last year at strong pricing, and I was able to identify 5 properties, my 1031, and I'm planning on closing 2 of them next month, but the other 3, I don't think I'm going to be able to close. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to place all that capital. So I've got a partially successful, partially failed 1031. So yeah, if you have a property that you already control, there's, you already know the property, you've already been operating, you already done DD on it, you already have the firm right to buy it. That's a great option.
Yeah, it's worked really well for me. I'm more of a people person when it comes to buying these properties. I got to get with the owner. And after a while, once you talk to them and they see you care about the property and you want to upgrade it and do some other things, they're more willing to work with you than just a broker that, you get in these counter offer, so forth. A lot of times they're worried about their management and their maintenance staff. Well, I typically try to keep everybody, at least to give them an opportunity to see if they'll work well with my company and what I do. Most of them do. So that's important. So once you get to learn why someone's selling and you can solve the problem, it's usually not a money problem. Matter of fact, most of the time it's not a money problem they're selling. So you solve the problem, then you go in, that's when the money comes in. And most people realize they're better off getting payments every month and receiving a steady income than they are a lump sum of cash, because they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and tell me about that. I know you've done this successfully as well. When you go to pay them off, or how many of them are like, "Hey, what happened? I want my payment still."
Well, yeah, and that's funny. You and I talked about this when we were last time when we met. More than half the time. By the way, I got to let people know, they're probably saying, "Does this person have this thing paid free and clear?" Most of them, I would say, majority of the ones I've done have, but some haven't. So there's some precautions you got to go through with that underlying mortgage, which it's usually with a local bank. We meet with the banker, we get it all set up to where I pay their payment. The banker emails, notifies that it's taken care of out of the lease and all that sort of thing. And
Yeah,
if it ever legal or whatever.
Yeah, legal disclaimer there. You want to get, if not a full preliminary title commitment, an owner and encumbrance report from a local title company, because that'll disclose.
Oh yeah, I still get a title report for it.
Yeah, that'll disclose that there is a mortgage of record, and typically that mortgage would need to be paid off at closing. But in this case, you're not transferring the deed, so there's not a required payoff. But if you're buying it for $1 million, you want to make sure they don't have $999,000 of debt on it in front of you. So that's why you're saying you go meet with the bank and say, "Hey, let me take over the payments," and you factor that into your cash flow and or your price. Because if somebody has $1 million property but a $999,000 loan, they're not supposed to get $200,000 option fee. We're not supposed to get any significant option fee.
So a lot of times what I'll do is it's written in the option. I got to give them a 60-day notice before I will close on the property. And especially for those that have moved off or I don't keep in touch with, which is, several of them, I get a phone call. And what do you mean you're going to buy it? I really like the payments coming. I said, okay, here's what we need to do then. Let's make it if you will just become the lender. Let's go ahead and close it. You become the lender, and they're okay with that.
Have you been
Because
able to get them to
they've got
take a
history.
second position? Have you been able,
I'm
because
sorry.
like, let's say the property's $1 million, you've now made it worth 2 million. You want to buy it at 2 million. If you got, quote, refinance debt on it, you could probably get a loan for $1.5 million, $1.4 million, but you can put a lot of cash in your pocket tax free. In those instances, if you still owed them a few $100,000, have you tried to get them to take a second position lien, or have you just decided to be low leverage and just convert the payments to a low leverage loan?
I've always stayed low leverage I've been in my ultimate goal, and I'm really, really close, is to get my entire portfolio debt free. So I've not been one to refinance and pull money out of properties too much.
Okay.
And I'm sure I could have, but I just never really pushed that. We keep everything the same. Here's another interesting thing. I had one with a gentleman out of Florida. It was 8%. I think we did this in 2007 when the rates were higher. And we go through, I think, several, and he had owner financed it after we had done the lease option. I 1031 out of a 40-unit apartment complex. And the bank came to me and said, hey, we can do 5.2 or something. I remember that. And I said, wow, it's going to save me, 3,000 or 4,000 a month. So I called him up. His name was Mike. I said, Mike, got some bad news. I'm going to have to pay you off. Why are you paying me off? Well, it's 5.2. And he said, just rewrite it at 5.2.
Wow.
So we went to attorney, spent a few $100s, and, rewrote it. So he's just happy getting the payments every month. So it worked out really well.
No, that's good. Now, would you ever personally sell on a master lease option, or would you prefer not to go that route? I know you sold several of your parks already.
Yeah, I sold 2 that way.
Okay.
Yeah, didn't have anything to exchange into at the time, so I didn't really want to get the taxes on it. And it was somebody that I knew, somebody that was in the business already, so I had a relationship with them. So that's, as long as I know who it is, it's no big deal. And it was fine.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have them anymore. They paid me off. But
Yep. All right. Anything else on
option is a really good tactic. Very few people using it these days. A lot of times they won't ask the question, but you almost imperative. You got to get to know the seller before you go down this route, and you have to keep it as simple as possible. If you start talking very complex issues with these sellers, they're going to go ask their lawyer or somebody and say, "What about this master lease option?" And he's going to say, "Oh no, you don't want to do that. The guy can walk off, destroy the park, all these kind of bad."
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask that. Have you had any problems with, doing CapEx, getting vendors to work for you, or dealing with the city that you don't have ownership, or do you have to just get some sort of affidavit or power of attorney, or get the seller involved?
Very few times if I had to. There's one particular property. This last one that I had that was city. It was all city utilities, which is fantastic, all individually metered, and the roads and the street lights were owned by the city. This guy built the park in 1999, beautiful park. So we started having some issues, and I would contact him and say, hey, I need this portion of the road fixed. And they said, well, you're not the owner. Fortunately, the owner's local, and I was able to grab him, go with him, and say, hey, he's now running this thing for me, so anything he says that needs to be done, would you please do it? And that's how we rectified it.
That's good. Now, I want to touch back on another item you mentioned earlier. You were master leasing a park that had over 100 park-owned homes. So how do you factor in, large-scale renovation cost? Is that just part of the deal that you're going to bear all those costs? And in general, what's your preference on park-owned homes versus tenant-owned homes?
I've always been a tenant-owned home guy. We all have been, I think. There's a gentleman involved with this property with me, who's also speaking at SECO, that handles pretty much the day-to-day stuff. So we're partners in it. He loves rental homes, has been doing them for years. So I thought, we'll give it a try. It's kind of in a renter's market. It's a good tenant base. We've tried a couple of folks. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to write up a home sale on a lease with an option or rent-to-own type contract with a tenant. But there were some significant costs. I think we, in the first 3 years, spent $350 on CapEx stuff, mainly mobile home repairs, roofs. I'm a metal roof guy, so as soon as the shingles start to go bad, I just throw metal on top instead of. I know it's a little bit more expensive, but they last forever. So we bore all those costs. It was another good thing for the owner or the seller to see we're
Right.
making the park better. And he would have. It's interesting. He would have owner financed it for me, but fortunately, this last deal that I sold was paid off, so I was able to get this debt free, this park. But yeah, we bear all those costs. I don't go back to the owner for anything, usually on a master lease with an option. It says I want them just to get a check every month. There's infills. I mean, we got all but one lot filled before I bought it. So all those homes we put in, they're all brand new product, or belong to us.
Now, what about the deed? Do you have them put the deed in escrow, or at the time you give them 60 days notice, is that the time you say, hey, it's time to prepare a warranty deed and send it my way? And then do you
Well, I actually, it's funny we do the closing with an attorney here in Georgia. We don't have title companies, but a lot of people said, did you do the master lease with an option with an attorney? I said, no, we didn't. I made it up myself. As part of what we talked about back in the days when Ernie used to teach his courses. He was big on the master lease with option. He had now I've taken the option, run it through my attorney to make sure it's okay. The lease was 5 pages, very simple, and the option was 2 pages long. So we both went and signed the lease, went to a notary, signed the option. We went to lunch that day, took the option down to the courthouse and filed it. So it clouded the title. That's all we did to actually initiate the transaction. Over half of them, that's what I did for my car or whatever you want to call it. So
nice.
Now, granted, once, like I said before, I did when I knew we were going to do this, I had my attorney do a title search and preliminary title work to make sure there wasn't anything in there that maybe he was hiding or didn't know about, and it was clean.
No, that's good. That's one of the potential pitfalls of a lease with options. Some people are like, oh, I'm not buying it yet. I'm not going to do my diligence. Like, you're going to be 300,000 in, and then realize the guy doesn't own it, or realize the guy has a mortgage of 5x on it that's in the way. Like, oops, It
was interesting when we did this title work. Come to find out, he had put it in a trust, and this gentleman had a stroke. Was the reason he was selling. He was still cognizant and everything, but it kind of affected his right side, and he'd forgotten. Honestly, had forgotten he put it in a trust with his kids as a beneficiary. So when I found that out through the title search, we got together with his attorney who put together this trust and said, okay, can we get the kids to sign off that it's going to be this option? And that was all taken care of before he and I did everything. Okay. But I would have not known that without that title search.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
But yeah, and I know people are going to have a lot of questions about this. Like I said, I'm going to be at the SECO conference this year. Another aspect we're going to have is the roundtable discussions every night. There's going to be 12 roundtables with what we call 2 hosts. You're going to be hosting one of them on the legal side, where every person that comes can individually go and have one-on-one time with folks. And that's going to be probably the area I'll be answering a lot of the lease option questions after my presentation, because I've got a split presentation with Ben Brabin, who's going to be talking about creative deal making. So I'm just going to be talking about this segment maybe for 20 minutes, and we've talked already for 30, and you just can't cover it all. So
right. No, that's good. Steve, what other tips or tricks or lessons learned you want to share from some of your?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll give everybody secret sauce, right? Everybody needs some secret sauce in today's environment. The investing environment's getting tough. One of the guys we've got coming this year is an economist. This guy's unbelievable. He actually is a consultant to the Fed. Casey Conway's his name. The reason I mention that, he's going to be giving a presentation on where we're going from here and what's about to happen. Very, very, one of the smartest guys I've ever met. Lending's going to change as we know it. There's several more. I don't want to cast doom on your podcast, but there's several banks in deep trouble on the commercial real estate side with evaluations. So it's going to be tough this year, the next couple of years, I think, on our whole industry when it comes to financing. Over expected pricing from people that own them now, or they paid too much, or we got loans resetting monthly. They're going really high. So one of the I think the next thing that people can do that nobody's doing. Frank Rolfe briefly touched upon this a couple of years ago. I think he tried a project in, I believe it was in Austin, working with the local government to turn a property around. Wasn't successful. He had a local councilman fighting him the whole way. I was involved in a project 2 years ago called the Perry Project. A small town in Georgia, about 30 miles south of here, had this horrible property with a terrible operator. And the city was clean, a beautiful little city, 20,000 people, has the Georgia State Fair. Millions of people come to this thing once a year. And they cleaning the city up. And then here's this guy right in that path that wouldn't do anything. Bank's about to take the property back. But to make a long story short, I got contacted by the bank, said, we know you've done this before. We need help. Can you talk to the bank president and the mayor? So I went with a friend of mine who does a lot of setting, cleaning. He's in the mobile home industry as well. And we sat down with that local mayor, city planner, police chief, fire chief, and the city engineer. Worked together as a team. We call it the Perry Alliance. And they were willing, they had already fined this guy over $100,000. It was going up at $100 a day because he wouldn't do anything. The bank was about ready to take the property back. It was a mess. But we were all able to work together to create this beautiful 100-space park when we got done. We had to put 35 homes in a trash can.
Wow.
All new roads. The city put in $1 million worth of water, upgraded the water, new fire hydrants. We brought in new home products.
Did you end up buying it from the previous owner, or was this all as a consultant?
Well, he was about to lose it. So part of this was, like I said, when the banker said, we'll give you his name, go down and talk to this guy. He's about to lose it. You could probably offer him just a little bit and get him to sell it to you. So, and a broker got involved with it too that knew what was going on. So we sat down with him. I think we gave him $15,000 to walk away.
Oh, wow. And then
he didn't owe a whole lot on it.
You were able to get the city to kick in $1 million infrastructure to save the park.
To save the area. And the mayor was excited. Everybody was excited. They worked with us the entire way for a year. Now they put expectations on us. One, they wouldn't remove the fines unless we did this, this, and this. We had 12 months to do it. And the bad part about it was just when COVID started. That time frame was when people couldn't talk and be around each other and everything else. But it was a wonderful alliance. For the first time ever in the 25 plus or almost 25 years I've been in this industry, did you have a town, an operator, a bank, everybody working together to turn around a mobile home community. And we all did it. I mean, we worked together. It was wonderful. The mayor's super happy. The park's great. Now, I don't own that park right now. We ended up having 78 empty lots once we got all of the trash out, kept the homes that were some of the people that have good residents have been there for a long time. And it was a big infill project. So I had one of the larger guys that I knew came in and said, listen, I'm buying 80 homes a month, putting them in parks throughout the country. Let me buy this property from him. So we did that and he filled it up. So it's full now. And everybody's happy, but we were able to form this alliance in a community. The residents were happy, the city council was happy, the mayor's happy. It's affordable housing for people, and they're all loving it. I think that can be replicated throughout the country with the right people.
Oh, that's great. It's a great success story. And
we're also Cole, the gentleman that's involved with me, is going to give a presentation at SECO on exactly what we did and how other people can do it.
No, cool. I look forward to hearing it.
But that's my secret sauce, I guess, if you want to say. I think that's the next area that nobody's doing. I know everybody's fighting. I know you're involved in the fight.
Right. It's hard to fight City Hall. I mean, you found a City Hall that was willing to play, and both parties had to, or more than two parties had to all get along and put in their effort. But that's great. I mean, I've seen some cities that are willing to help out, and I've seen some cities that are like, we hope you got a business. And it's like, those are the ones that are hard to deal with. But yeah, if you can find a way to make it work for everybody, even better. And
affordable housing is a need. It's becoming a greater need every day. So I think, I even asked Mayor Walker, I said, Mayor, if I was able to team up with somebody else and do this again, would you be willing to talked to the official, said, absolutely. He said, I'll be a referral to anybody you want to do this. They said, you virtually saved this area. The police, I don't know how many thousands they saved a week, but not having a car there and everything else. So it was great. It was wonderful. It was good to see. But for the most excitement, enjoyment I got out of that whole deal was those 22 residents. One of them was 62 years old and spent his entire life in that mobile home park.
Wow.
Birth to marriage to raising his kids and so forth.
Wow.
The excitement and the sense of relief on their faces. They even hugged my partner Cole that helped me with that project, and they loved him. But to see the people where their neighborhood was transformed from drug addicts in the empty homes, it was just horrible. That was probably the most fulfillment I got. It wasn't the money made. It was great to align with the government, but to see those folks and now they're having neighborhood barbecues and everything else. Before they would not go out after dark. It was just horrible.
No, I definitely can appreciate that. I've seen that, not to that level, but other parks where we move in and we fix everything, and then all of a sudden people have been there for years and years are like, if you brought it back to like this owner 5 owners ago, we're buying a park here in about 3 weeks, and I met with a resident as part of our DD. He's been there for 40 years. And he set the houses to begin with. And he's just like, he told me the history of all the owners and when it went to the bank and then the next bank. And then when the flood came, when these guys did this wrong, and he's just kind of like, he's now, I think he's like 90. So he's, he's already given up on the park turnaround. I'm like, we're going to get this thing bought. We're going to fix it. And he's kind of looking at me like, heard that before, but when we do, I think we will. When we do, I'm sure he's going to be the first guy to come up and give me a high five, or like, good job, man. So I look forward to it. But that's great stuff.
Well, one last thing, if you don't mind me talking about, the SECO event. A lot of people don't understand it. We, over the years, we've been able to we got 4 manufactured homes that are coming. We got all the service providers, the vendors, the suppliers, the service industry like yourself, brokers, lenders. All packed into this one area, but so there's really everything that you need there. But the huge thing is the networking. Some of the best investors, the most successful investors that I've met through the years have been through events like this, where you network them. We're all willing to share information that we know to help people out. This year it's going to be on 9/11, September the 11th. So we've got 2 wonderful keynote speakers coming to honor those that lost their lives that day, and also the war on terror. One of them's a dear friend of mine, Scott Mann. You and I talked about him earlier, who I helped him and his brother back in 04 and 05 with 3 parks that they inherited kind of from their parents. And Scott's now a retired lieutenant colonel that's on Fox News. You'll see him part of Operation Pineapple Express that helped people get out of Afghanistan. But he's going to be talking about how much the industry has meant to him, as well as tie in the 9/11 tribute. So it's going to be a good event.
Cool. I look forward to it, Steve. I appreciate your time. Thanks a lot. Thanks for all your wisdom here.
Oh, no problem, man. If anybody, like you said, if anybody wants to know how they can go to the event and all that, they can get in touch with you. You'll have the information on your website and send out some emails and so forth. And I appreciate you having me on. It was fun.
You got it.
And I look forward to seeing you in September at SECO.
Same here. Thanks, Steve.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.